Hello Year 7 and welcome to this second video in which we're going to be looking at this key extract from Oliver Twist. I'm going to be thinking about, as we read, people's attitudes to the poor and orphan children in Victorian era, which is about 1850 to 1901, and that's exactly when this book was written and set. Who's the orphan in this story? Well, of course, it's Oliver Twist. He's the orphan. In this next extract, Oliver has been accepted as the apprentice, who's going to work, of an undertaker. That's someone who makes coffins for the dead and organises the burial. Mr. Bumble walks with Oliver to his new home and employer, and Mr. and Mrs. Sowerberry. If you've got a highlighter, perhaps you'd like to highlight with me as we look out for evidence of people's attitudes to poor orphan children. "Aha!" said the undertaker, looking up from the book and pausing in the middle of a word. "Is that you, Bumble?"
"No one else, Mr. Sowerberry," replied the beadle. "Here, I've brought the boy."
Oliver made a bow.
"Oh, that's the boy, is it?"
said the undertaker, raising the candle above his head to get a better view of Oliver.
"Mrs. Sowerberry, will you have the goodness to come here a moment, my dear?"
Mrs. Sowerberry emerged from a little room behind the shop and presented the form of a short, then squeezed-up woman with a vixenish countenance.
"My dear," said Mrs. Sowerberry deferentially, "this is the boy from the workhouse that I told you of."
Oliver bowed again.
"Dear me," said the undertaker's wife, "he's very small."
"Why, he's rather small," replied Mr. Bumble, looking at Oliver as if it were his fault that he was no bigger.
He is small, there's no denying it, but he'll grow, Mrs. Sowerberry, he'll grow."
I'm going to pause there for a minute. I wonder if we can identify anything that reveals people's attitudes to Oliver. So far we've had, "Dear me, he's very small," and Bumble looking as if it were Oliver's fault that he was no bigger. Now we know that he's very small because he's actually been starved. But somehow it's still his fault. And equally, Mrs. Sowerberry seems rather disappointed. Again, already a little bit disgusted with him. Let's see what she says now.
"I dare say he will."
"That's it, he'll grow," replied the lady pettishly.
"On our victuals and our drink, I see no saving in parish children, not I, for they always cost more to keep than they're worth. However, men always think they know best. There, get downstairs, little bag of bones."
With this, the undertaker's wife opened a side door and pushed Oliver down a steep flight of stairs into a stone cell, damp and dark, forming the ante-room to the coal cellar and denominated kitchen, wherein sat a slatternly girl in shoes down at heel and blue worsted stockings very much out of repair. I wonder what details you can find in this paragraph that show Mrs. Sowerberry's attitudes. She seems, for example, to be disappointed that he'll have to fatten up on their drink. She sees no saving in parish children. A parish child is an orphan. They're being looked after by the parish. That's like their local community. And she says they cost more to keep than they're worth. What does that show us about her attitudes? Well, she's actually trying to weigh up the financial investment in this boy, which suggests that she sees him only in terms of cost and benefit, rather than as a human being. In fact, you could say that she is dehumanizing Oliver. I wonder if you notice any similarities to the way she treats Oliver and the way she treats a dog. Do you notice that she calls him a little bag of bones, and that she actually pushes Oliver down a steep flight of stairs into a stone cell? Now, it is the kitchen, but I have to say the stone cell seems to suggest another kind of imprisonment. What does that suggest about her attitudes to the boy and the way in which she pushes him? That suggests something quite forceful. She certainly doesn't see much value in Oliver. Little bag of bones? Again, the suggestion that she's disappointed in his size and that he needs to understand that he has low status in this household. Let's read the second part. Ready for my fancy sticking in. "Here's Charlotte," said Mr. Sowerberry, who had followed Oliver down. "Give this boy some of the cold bits that were put by for Trip. He hasn't come home since the morning." "So he may go without 'em, I dare say. The boy isn't too dainty to eat 'em, are you, boy?" Oliver, whose eyes glistened at the mention of meat, and who was trembling with eagerness to devour it, replied in the negative, and a plateful of coarse broken victuals was set before him. Okay, Trip. Have a think about who Trip might be, and the coarse broken victuals set before him. I think Trip might in fact be a dog, and I think these might be scraps that are being fed to Oliver. Just written in highlighter. Sorry, you can't actually see that. I wish some well-fed philosopher, whose meat and drink turn to gall within him, whose blood is ice, whose heart is iron, could have seen Oliver Twist clutching at the dainty viands that the dog had neglected. I wish he could have witnessed the horrible avidity with which Oliver tore the bits asunder, with all the ferocity of famine. There is only one thing I should like better, and that would be to see the philosopher making the same sort of meal himself with the same relish. I wonder who he's talking about when he says a philosopher. A philosopher is someone who thinks for a living, who examines life and its meaning. There were lots of philosophers and theorists around in the Victorian era, and some of them even had ideas rather poor. One such person was Thomas Malthus. Oh dear. Malthus. And Malthusian economics is a phrase used to describe his idea that there is such a thing as a surplus, that you can have too many people, and that actually, if more people died, there would be more food to go around for the rest of us and more resources. I wonder if it's that kind of philosopher who could wish away the lives of a young man like Oliver, whom Dickens is talking to, wishing that he could eat a bowl full of dog scraps, and to say that he didn't wish good things for Oliver, who's so avidly chomping on these bits of meat. Seems like Dickens certainly sympathises with Oliver. "Well," said the undertaker's wife when Oliver had finished his supper, which she had regarded in silent horror and with fearful auguries of his future appetite. "Have you done?" There being nothing eatable within his reach, Oliver replied in the affirmative. That means he said, "Yes." "Then come with me," said Mrs. Sowerberry, taking up a dim and dirty lamp and leading the way upstairs. "Your bed's under the counter. You don't mind sleeping among the coffins, I suppose? But it doesn't much matter whether you do or you don't, for you can't sleep anywhere else. Come, don't keep me here all night." Oliver lingered no longer, but meekly followed his mistress. Okay, so in our final thoughts about her attitudes, I'm noticing that she says silent horror and with fearful auguries of his future appetite. Rather than being shocked that Oliver is hungry, which would imply that he hasn't been fed properly, instead she's worried about feeding him. Again, about the cost of feeding Oliver, which suggests that she still cares more about money than she does about the little starving orphan who's in front of her. Her attitude is one of a very practical nature, but a heartless one, you might say. We also notice that Oliver meekly follows her, and she calls him to her side. This again suggesting that she sees him as the lower status in the house, not much above the household pet. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that reading of this extract. There's a quiz for you to complete on forms. Have a go.